I'm Keith Frankel. I'm the host of the Boston chapter of Creative Mornings. Just celebrated our second year. In that time, we've grown from 0 attendees to 3,500 active attendees. We've hosted about 40 events. Most of these are morning, a lot of evening ones. Going to get into a lot of this. But before we do that, I'd like to do some kind of housekeeping things. First, we're all here together because a few amazing people in New York make it happen. They make this global thing I'm a part of that's become part of my identity happen. They get us all here today to make this happen. Incredible staff, incredible volunteer. Can you do me a favor and give them a round of applause? Thanks. Thank you. All right, second. So I have about 30 minutes, but I would only like to spend about 15 of that talking. I would like to spend the second half completely open to communication in this group. So this is about you guys. We should make it about you guys. And even though I'm going to open up the last 15 minutes to you, I can still kind of cater the first 15 minutes to who you are and what you do and what you're interested in. So it would be super helpful for me to get to know you guys. So I'm going to just quickly call out some things. When you hear something that you identify with, do me a favor and raise your hand nice and high, and don't put it down till I tell you to. Cool? Okay. If you host an entirely online community, meaning no live events, no live getting together, whatever it is, please do me a favor and raise your hand. I thought there would be some. Okay, keep your hands up. For all of you in-person communities, if you are running a community group for a product company, raise your hand. Okay. There we go. Nonprofit. Individual interest groups. What else do we have here? Creative groups. I love it. I'll take individual interest. Okay. Anybody I'm missing? Put your hands up anyways. I don't care. Okay. So this is rare, right? It's rare that a lot of people from different industries and different arenas and different markets get together in a room on a Friday all day long to listen to a bunch of people ramble, yet all have generally the same goals in mind and the same responsibilities and the same pains and the same interests. And that is something that should be celebrated. So let's celebrate that. So do me a favor, look left, look right, look in front of you, look behind you, and give everybody a nice, juicy high five. All right, that's enough of that love. Let's get this going. Okay, so I know you. Now let me tell you a bit about my background. Keith Frankel, originally from a very small town in Alabama, moved to Boston for school, thought I would be a professional philosopher, which essentially means write a few articles every year, a book every few years that nobody reads, and that would be it. Fortunately, that didn't work out. And I started my real career, my creative career, in New York, producing reality TV shows at MTV. I was a terrible person. So I produced 3 seasons of the show Made. I produced the first season of the show 16 and Pregnant. All right. And after a few years of feeling completely morally bankrupt, I decided I had to do something else with my life. So I made the transition to tech. I was the creative director at a marketing software company called HubSpot. Is anyone familiar with HubSpot? Okay. So my job at HubSpot was kind of twofold. One, prep the brand for the IPO, which happened at the end of 2014. And the other was put on these giant conferences, this inbound conference. So the years I was there, we put on conferences that were about 15,000 people, $3 million budgets, crazy big things. That is when I joined Creative Mornings during my time at HubSpot. And so while prepping these giant events, thousands of people from all over the world, and prepping my little baby events, I came to realize that my baby events were way better. They kicked that HubSpot conference ass. All right, so what I want to talk about here, there's been a lot of stuff about maintaining your community and growing your community. I kind of want to talk about building just a badass product, where that product is the live experience. that work with everybody here? Is everyone okay with this? All right, let's do this. Okay, so I told you in the 2 years I've run Creative Mornings, it sounds all good and fuzzy, but we've been through a lot of shit too. We've had, there was an original host of Creative Mornings who I took over from. When they quit, they started promoting against us, hosting their own events the exact same times, same months, same days as all of our events. We had no audience, so we were immediately competing against some enemy who knew exactly what we did. It was very bizarre. We've had speakers cancel 3 nights before the event. We've had spaces cancel a week before the event. We've had food not show up. I've had 2 complete staff turnovers. I've had stalkers show up to an event, people who stalked the speaker, and had to have like special security for these things. So I've seen everything, and it's been awful. But it's also been one of just kind of the best things that's ever happened to me. And Creative Mornings in general is the best run organization I've ever been a part of. Hands down, nothing compares. And I think there's a very simple reason for that, which is actually what I want to talk about. I think Creative Mornings HQ and all of our global chapters succeed through simplicity. We don't talk ad nauseum about process or workflow or any of these things. Creative Mornings bestows these guiding principles on us and then leaves us to play within them. So for example, these were in my first call, I believe with Sally, Kevin, when they were interviewing me. It was a pretty serious interview process. At the end of it, I said, what would be successful to you guys? In a year, what do you want to see this thing be? Do you want to see it grow 50% year over year? What do you want? And she said, Sally said this, I don't care if 50 people come or 500 people come, as long as you create the most inclusive, enjoyable, and inspiring event that anyone's ever been to. Very clear guidelines, right? But in addition to those, they also provided us some other really simple boundaries. Host 1 morning event every single month. That's easy. Thank the global partners. Pretty easy. Host this amazing, badass event. Pretty easy, right? So they gave us these very simple constraints, but then what they did, and this was mentioned earlier, they allow us to play within those boundaries. Creative Mornings Boston is mine, right? I can make it whatever I want. If you go to Seattle, it is a completely different tone and different theme. So they provide a lot of autonomy for us to play within creatively. They provide the very basic structure. They inject resources so we don't worry about all the bookkeeping and minutia. We can get back to the creative part. They inject just ridiculous motivation through summits, through coming and meeting, doing these things. But then we play, and we get to do it. And I found that to be one of the best things, is not a ton of process, not a ton of rules, very basic guidelines, and allow us to play. And so over time, in our own live events, people say, how did you build this community? And I say, I created some simple guiding principles that we use towards everything we do. Finding speakers, finding location, finding sponsor, finding food, finding all these things. We have these very basic guiding principles. And so I'm going to share those. One of the questions I get a lot is, how do you market? Like, how do you go do these things? I don't do shit, right? I think that is the wrong lens to look at this thing through. How do I get to them? How do I touch them? How do I bother them and get them over here? We don't worry about any of that. We send 1 email a month, and that is all we do. But we throw the most badass live event that anyone goes to, and that has been enough to grow this thing every month. So I'm just going to kind of go through the different things we think about and how I really tackle these things, and some of the rules I give my team for each one of them. So I just don't want to miss anything. So the first thing is staff. So I mentioned I've had 2 complete staff turnovers. When I first took this thing on, I was like, oh my God. Like, I'm so anti-joinerism. I don't want to do this. I have to find sponsors and speakers and food and a space and kill me. So I just quickly ran out and tried to find as many people to come help me as possible. And within the first month, we had bloated the team to 10 people. You're all staff, I don't care. Everybody's staff members. Sure, just do this and you do this and you do this. Those people were all gone in 3 months. I just said, oh, those aren't the right people. Let me go get new people. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. Those people were gone at like month 9. So at month 9 of our first year run, I said, okay, I'm not doing something here right. Let me slow down and do this thing alone for 2 or 3 months. And so I was the only member of Creative Mornings Boston for a month or 2. And then I started thinking, okay, I've seen some of these people come month after month after month. Let me reach out to one of these and see if they want to do this. And in this time, this grace period where it was just me, I had people asking, can I volunteer, can I volunteer? I was just like, no more. Like, let me figure out what's going on here. And so over time, when I started chatting with these most engaged people, they became the most engaged staff members. People who, the kind of person who will happily get up at 6:30 in the morning on a Friday, get out of bed, get dressed, eat breakfast, come to this thing at 8:30, month after month after month. And so I said, okay, what if I set a rule where I will only allow people to be on the staff if they've attended 3 events in a row? Can't skip one, got to attend 3, and I'll only talk to you after all 3. That's how I built my current staff of about 5 people, and they are unbelievable. The best people I've ever worked with, at any job I've ever worked with, these 3 people who just want to get out of bed and come work, and they're willing to prove it to me. So some chapters write contracts or sign contracts. I don't feel that's necessary. The social contract of showing you're willing to get up and put in the effort to come to this thing month after month is what's required. And so I believe in this rule. Pick the people who are the best fit for what you're doing, and they show their fit through action. The next thing is I keep my team really small. What I've noticed is just taking dozens of people every event will offer to participate. And that's great, and that's a good sign that what you're doing is right, but that does not mean that they should be part of your team. If you start to let this team get unruly and out of shape, you start to lose that bond that keeps the team so connected and so together. And it starts to become unclear why some people are there and why these other staff members are working so hard, or what's the investment that this person is putting in, and like what are they contributing to the team in a big way. So I'm not that interested in having 50 volunteers in a room. I'd rather have 4 unbelievable staff members. That has been another really big lesson for us. Most people will not come the 3 months, but we'll sometimes get to a certain point where I won't let more than 6 staff members on the team. Just will not let it. That's kind of an arbitrary number, but that's been helpful to make sure that the team stays really close and committed. Everyone knows what they're responsible for over time. Okay, so the next thing that I get asked a lot about is how I find speakers. How do you find the talent? And I have 2 kind of interesting rules for speakers. One, you have to let me write your speech with you. Now, this is an interesting one. And the reason we do this, and I actually I never even touch the speech, but I'm looking for someone who isn't nervous about that, someone who doesn't have so big of an ego that they can't be part of a collaborative process. So you got to run your speech by me. I want to make sure it's good for the group. I don't have the time to rewrite someone else's talk, but I just want to see how the person responds when I offer that. And guess what we get? We get people who are incredibly open and approachable and do these very human talks that anyone in the audience can resonate with anybody in the audience, and folks in the audience can reach out to that person over time. So we're sourcing people who are more like partners and less like the hired talent, right? So that's one of our rules. The other rule is they have to be willing to create content for us after the fact. Will you do a blog post for us? Will you do an interview with us? Will you do an on-camera interview with me? Which we've done 3 of and never posted any of. But the point is, are you willing to put in the extra effort? Again, this is a filtering option to help us get the right connection, the right people who are a good fit for what we've got going on. The next one I hear all the time is, how do I do sponsors? We are all desperate for money, right? So Creative Mornings is an interesting beast, because when you look from chapter to chapter, people handle finances completely differently. There are some chapters who are nonprofits. There are some that are LLCs. Some have bank accounts. I've never touched a dollar. I've never spent a dollar. I've never touched money from a sponsor. We've held over nearly 40 events. Our birthday cost $5,000. I literally have not touched a check. I've never seen anything. That's the event I want to host. That's what I want to be a part of. I don't want money to be in this at all. So how do I do that, right? It's not easy. Okay, so what I notice with sponsors is folks like you, building a community, putting on live events, you're fucking desperate for someone to give you money so you can hold this event. That is the worst way to approach this thing. Do not approach from a point of desperation. You have something special to contribute to these people. You're not begging them for what they've got. So what I do with sponsors, again, guiding principles. One, I do not let you sponsor unless you've attended 2 events. I don't want your money. Do not care. If you're not a partner in this, if you're not in it with me month after month, if you're not really invested in this, I do not care. One of the benefits of this, someone asked earlier about I'm responsible for a metric, we're getting this thing off the ground. I don't know who that, right there. Okay. There's this famous Mike Tyson quote, everybody has a game plan until they get punched in the face. Okay, I believe that. Everyone's got a metric they want until they get blasted in the face with my live event. And then they're just happy to be a part of it. That goes a long way. So if I make you come see what kind of event I'm putting on, it immediately shuts down these barriers. They just want to work with me. They don't say, so what can you do for us? All right. The second rule for sponsors that I have is you cannot just contribute money. You have to contribute something experiential. We do not take checks, okay? You have to bring something to the event, either as a giveaway to our attendees, as something fun that they can do, a photo booth, a drawing contest, something. I want you to come equipped with an idea that will enrich this live experience, not just a paycheck that will pay for bacon and eggs, right? That's not what I'm interested in here. That is another immediate filter because some people just want to write checks and get their logo on something that seems hot and big, and I have no interest in that. Final thing is like location. I will not pay for a location. Will not do it. I have an active community, and they're coming, and they're going to have a blast, and do you want them to have a blast in your space or not? I've never paid for a location. I will not pay for a location. That is a rule. What that says to me is you're not that interested in having us there. My community doesn't mean enough to you that you would offer it. What it says to me is, no, what are you giving me? And I'm not interested in that kind of relationship. So if you look at these are all partnership-driven ideas. And the reason I say partnership and not things like sponsorship is this doesn't happen by accident. I am trying to create a community that I work with. That includes speakers, that includes staff, that includes sponsors. And after the event, if you're no longer a sponsor, you're still part of the community because we were a partner on this thing, right? This is very different. So in the first few months when I started Creative Mornings, the Boston chapter, when we were off of hiatus, it was very difficult to get off the ground. And I asked Sally, do I have to have an event like next month? She's like, no, take your time, take your time. So 3 months later, I had people who I knew wanted to be partners. I had speakers who I knew just wanted to help, wanted to build this thing. I had a staff who sucked, but at the time, really were into the thing, right? And so over time, by trying to build partnerships with people and not transactional relationships. I want genuine relationships with everybody who deals with us, not transactional relationships. We get this ongoing rolling community. So a partner in the past, a sponsor, is actually an attendee. A host location, they bring their whole team. So past speakers, they bring themselves and their friends and family. Like, this is the kind of relationship we're building. The final thing, well, actually 2 final things, and then I'll stop real quick. I know I've gone way over my 20 minutes I wanted to stop at. Location, building partnerships. It's also getting access to different parts of the community. So when I moved to Boston from New York, some of the people I worked at MTV with me said, well, say goodbye to your creative community. I was like, wait, what? They're like, dude, there is fucking nothing there. You are done. And when I first got to Boston, I was like, holy shit, they're right. There is nothing here. Over time, being there, I realized, no, there is a lot here, but it's sitting in disparate communities. There's a design community, and another design community, and another design community. There's a content marketing community. There's a social media community. There's a this and a that and a this and a that and a this. And I wanted Creative Mornings to be the thing in the middle that everything was a part of. And so I've never pushed away other community groups. I ask what we can do for their events. I invite them to come to our events because they're a feeder for what I'm trying to do here. We're not isolated. We're not independent. I don't want to alienate them. But another thing is, if you have these groups and they're all disparate, they're also spread out geographically. And so one thing we do is we change locations every 3 months If someone wants to host us, they have to host us for 3 months in a row. What that does is build in a routine. We're gonna be in this area of the city for the next 3 months. If you can't make it 1 month, there are 2 more to come. And you can hang with us then. And then once we've given you, we think, enough value over the next few months, we'll pick up and move to the exact opposite part of the city. And we'll be there 3 months. And so this is another vetting process for making sure that we forge these really deep interactions and relationships with these people that work with us. We expect more from them, but we also give them more over time. And when we move around, those people are really, we've ingratiated ourselves to those people. Those are part of our community. And so this is kind of a really big, important thing for us, is moving around in this way. So in general, when I try and put these things together, I'm looking for partners, and then I try and get those partners to the event, and then it's event time. So here are just some crazy things I do at our event to make sure it's amazing. Whatever energy an attendee receives the moment they walk in the door is the energy they take for the rest of that event. If you've lost them, you're not getting them back. So when someone comes in the door, I have staff right there to blast them with just ridiculous, over-the-top, gregarious energy. That is one of the most important things we do. All right? The second thing we do is we only choose locations where there's an area for hanging out and there's an area for sitting. Because the first thing that people do is they come, they're uncomfortable, they pull out their phone, and they just close up. And once they're here, you're not getting them back. It's over. So we don't allow that. This would never work for us unless we locked off the outside, and then when it's time to sit, we let them move. So that's been one of the most important things we've ever done. Otherwise, your event is a networking event. I don't do networking events. These guys will tell you they don't want to do networking events. Fucking nobody likes networking events. They're awful, okay? We don't do that. Creative Mornings is not a networking event. At least not Creative Mornings Boston. And one of the main reasons one of the main ways we avoid that is by segmenting what's going on. Final thing is staff. At the event, the staff has done their work. I don't want them to do any other work but just hang out and have a good time, right? So this is when we bring in the volunteers. You want to volunteer? Do registration, but I'm there, right? The staff, the only thing they're responsible for is making sure people don't hide in the corner, don't pull out their phone, and don't sit down. That's their entire job, is to make sure that every individual there is having a social interaction with another person there. Otherwise, they should just sit at home and watch the talks online. And that's not what we want, right? So my team, their only job at the event is to go make sure people are engaged with other people at the event. So there's a lot there, and we can unpack it any way you want. I just felt like this has worked for us. We've never had to spend money. We've never had to beg for money, because we do everything we can to make sure that the event is so good that people beg for us to host it with them. They beg to sponsor it. They beg to be able to attend it or put it in their office, and so on and so forth. So that's all I got. Thank you, guys.
Questions, anyone?
Why do you do this?
I don't know. I was telling Tina this earlier today. I hate Creative Mornings 28 out of 30 days. 29th is the event, and I fucking love it. And the day after, I'm just feeling myself, all right? And that influx of just excitement carries me for the next 28 days. And so when HubSpot, I can say that a million reasons, and the truth is none of them is going to scratch whatever the real itch is. When HubSpot IPO'd, I decided to do freelancing, and I was also speaking at conferences, and I had no company to put. People only want to listen to your talk at a conference if you're Keith Frankel, HubSpot, Keith Frankel, MTV. Keith Frankel sits alone in his living room in his underwear watching reruns of Game of Thrones. No one is interested in that, okay? But Creative Mornings was that thing. And that's when I started realizing that there's something here. Like, this is bigger than these other things I'm a part of. The summit, they brought it up earlier. When that happened about halfway through my first year run, and I was kind of like, I didn't take part in Facebook or Twitter or any of the things with the rest of the groups. And then we came to New York, and I saw the rest of the people in this audience, and I was blown away. I walked away from that thing thinking, this is what I have to do. This is it. This is unlike anything I've ever seen before. So earlier when I mentioned they inject these moments of inspiration, that's the thing, that's the kind of thing I'm thinking of. And also being the brand building of this, like being the guy who runs Creative Mornings Boston, I fucking hated Boston when I was in my first few years there. Now I'm a decade into it. I don't know if I can leave. And the main reason is Creative Mornings has given me a community in Boston that to walk away from would seem crazy. And I don't want to go start another one because this one is awesome and it's mine. So it's almost impossible to answer this with like a silver bullet, but I don't know, those are some of the things just flooding.
You mentioned earlier that they gave you enough freedom to make it a 50-person event or a 500-person event, and you also mentioned like the different events you had at HubSpot versus Creative Mornings. Do you have a sweet spot? Do you have a preference? Like, what's your favorite in terms of numbers?
I like the 150 to 200. That I think is just I think that's a beautiful spot. Yeah, 100 is a fun event. Most of our events, we keep pretty intimate, 100 to 150. But there is something cool about that extra 100 attendees. HubSpot, I've done a 5,000 event, I've done a 10,000, and I've done a 16,000 person conference. 1 to 200 is my favorite by far. I think what you get is still a high degree of intimacy, but it feels big enough, the atmosphere is there that I'm not saying you can't have a great event otherwise, but I'm saying I felt the growing pains as HubSpot's inbound conference got bigger and bigger, and I wouldn't want to be a part of events that size anymore.
What makes your events so kick-ass? What are some of the ingredients for what makes it so exciting and something that people really, really want to come to?
So the biggest takeaway that I hear is people saying, I've never seen anything like this. Right? So we do a lot of small things. I don't let you sit down. I make you hang out with other people. You get in the photo booth, eat free breakfast and drink free coffee. And those are just like things to keep people busy. I'm going to answer this with a kind of general response because I don't want to be specific. I think I'm pretty awesome. And so I think that helps. My staff is awesome. I've put out a vibe that attracts a certain type of person. And those people are awesome. There's a great fit for what my staff does, for the kind of partners we work with, and the actual audience member. There's a perfect harmony between those things. And I think that's important, because sometimes you have people who aren't really about what you're doing, and they're there for some other reason, something transactional. And I think that just kills the vibe of a party. But one of the most important things my staff and I talk about is, I don't want to hear you use the word best practices. Don't want to hear it. Best practices, the road to best practices is paved with mediocrity. They're best practices because everyone's doing that. It's become the average. So if someone says, oh, this event did this, I say, well, don't do it then, let's figure something else out. So everything we're trying to do is looking at something that exists that people like and trying to do it better. So we're constantly holding the bar really high for one another, and I think the aggregate of all that effort really makes just an awesome in-person event.
I think Tina talks about it being an engine of generosity, but one thing that I haven't heard today as much is the role of creativity in building your community. So community is one thing, but a community of creatives is something else, and I understand inclusivity and all of that. I'm wondering, so your branding is so important, and that's obviously something that's driving you, and many of us here might not be traditional creatives. Can you identify some ways to help build a brand or be more creative if that's not your go-to?
You're not going to like this answer.
I'm creative.
Because it just seems so blah. The Creative Mornings logo has brought us 0 attendees. And the Creative Mornings opening music on the videos brings us 0 attendees. The thing that brings us attendees is a beautiful feeling of community the second someone walks in the door. The email template we send out, 0 attendees. The Facebook banner, 0 attendees. I hate when people say the brand is so great. It's the feeling, that the experience of interacting with that brand that brings us all of our attendees. And so,
Hey Keith, I'm going to challenge you on that
do it.
afterwards.
All right, let's do it. Let's talk.
Okay?
Challenge accepted. So I I worry about people who immediately come out of the gate and handicap themselves by saying, I'm not a traditional creative, how do I create these things? You understand the vibe of whatever it is you want to build, right? The vibe of the community. And there are people who want to match that vibe. How do you find them? How do you hang out with them? How do you get this thing going? That is what I think is like most important here. The traditional creativity and making of assets and deliverables, that is secondary. I just don't think that's that valuable. Last one.
Ooh, okay. So we learned about some of the engagement tools that HQ uses to manage the wider community, but as a host in Boston, how often do you meet with your own staff in the run-up to the monthly event? How do you plan each event?
Everything we do is done in Slack. Everything. So Slack has become our way to hang out even when we don't see each other in person. So I would say it's been 10 months since we've seen each other outside of an event. Right? This is a big no-no to people, but we're talking all day long in Slack, and it's hysterical. And we have a blast, and we're close, and everyone knows what they're responsible for. We're sharing ideas. It's the kind of asynchronous way for us to be in a room together all the time. So Slack is huge for us. We make all decisions for that. Sometimes 2 people will get together over here or 3 people over there, but as the whole team getting together outside of the event, that just has not been necessary for us. And we have a ridiculously close team that supports one another and works together and is in constant communication. So that's how we do it. I know a lot of people completely disagree with that. I'm in total support of getting people together to meet each other and hang out. I just don't think it has to be this overly formal process. I think as long as people feel comfortable connecting, if the group is intimate enough, they'll make it work. So we have 2 girls who hang out like every day. We have a staff member who I see once a week. But as a whole group, it has not been a requirement for us to sit together week after week or month over month and still make this thing run.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Keith
guys.
Frankel.